All right, we are on, and this is Joshua Stamper from the Aspire to Lead podcast, and I have Darrin Peppard with me with the Learning into Leadership podcast, and we're doing a collaboration, and I am so excited. Darrin, thank you so much for getting together with me today.
Yeah, man, this is really exciting. The first time I've had an opportunity to do something like this, and definitely, bringing Aspire to Lead and leaning into leadership together. Man, two cool platforms, and definitely an opportunity for people that typically listen to my show to listen to you, and vice versa. Although they should be listening to both anyway, but now they can just pick. Hey, I can listen to this episode, either on Josh's show or on Darrin's show. This is going to be really cool. And you know what I love about, putting this particular collaboration together is, we're in the month of August.
Yep.
Schools are getting started. I got a text this morning from a good friend who said, man, my entire staff is coming back today. I'm so excited. And, as a school leader, those days were so cool. I talk about it all the time, that I miss the first day of school. But that first day back with staff is super cool. But we've got, of course, across the country, a lot of new people who, are stepping into that leadership role, whether that's a building principal or a superintendent, assistant principal, whatever, for the very first time this fall.
Awesome. So yeah, I think that's where the conversation begins is, both of us, we travel around the United States and we speak with school leaders all the time. There are so many brand new leaders this summer, and they're starting off and they're kicking things off, and they have a lot of questions in regards to what their role is, and they just want some advice. And so, I love this idea that you brought up was, collaborating together to answer some questions from some aspiring new leaders that are getting into some different roles, either assistant principal, or maybe a district role also. So we have reached out to our audience members and just asked for questions. And so I'm looking at a list of like 20 different questions that people threw at us. And I would love to answer all of them. I know you would too, but we chose about 5 or 6 of them to focus on ones that we thought were really important and something that, would be beneficial for them to hear some advice prior to starting their role.
Yeah, for sure. And it was interesting too, because when you look through all of these questions, there are some real common themes. So I think we've done a nice job of picking out that 5 or 6 or so that kind of encapsulate those specific themes that hopefully those who are in those new leadership roles can really dial in on those. And let's be honest, folks, maybe you've been doing this for 25 years as a school leader or for 5 years or 10 years or whatever. We all can use sometimes a little bit of that recharge and that re-energizing. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and dive in. The first question, I'll go ahead and ask the question. We're going to both talk about it. And then we're just going to play a little tennis across the net here with some questions. So the first question that we want to get into today is, how do you navigate building positive relationships with staff while at the same time enforcing your expectations? And man, I love this question. I'll let you go ahead and go first with what your thoughts are, but this is such a good question.
Yeah, I was laughing because this is something that it took a long time to kind of find that balance, because it's true. You're wanting to make sure that you are going through with either students, with your staff, to enforce those expectations, the things that need to be accountable for. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're building a relationship with them and letting them know that you care for them and that you want the best for them. And I think that's the thing that you have to really work on, especially as a brand new leader. I remember as a dean of students and an assistant principal, when I first started on 2 different campuses, I'd walk into a room and the teacher would be at their desk and they'd jump up immediately and walk around and act like they were doing something important. And it's like, no, you don't need to do that. That's not why I'm here. It's not a gotcha moment. And it really took some time to build that relationship so they understood that I wasn't there just to come down on them or to be the enforcer. And it's the same with the students. When I first was in those roles, I'd come into a room and everyone would be like, ooh, who you here for? Who you getting in trouble now, right? And I had to slowly change that perception of like, no, I'm here because, I wanted to engage with the class, or I want to, co-teach with this teacher, or I'm just here to, check in on them and see how they're doing. So for myself, I always laugh that I love spreadsheets. I know that's probably something that people are probably turning off right now. or glazing over with their
Don't go
eyes.
away, please.
Don't go
Please, people,
spreadsheets.
don't go
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the spreadsheet was for what I called my relationship walks. And so, we always did walkthroughs for the academic piece and to make sure that we got data for, teaching practices. But I also wanted to have something to record so that I knew my touch points. Like, have I touched in with this person to see how they're doing in their own personal life? Is there something else going on beyond the school building that we can be a resource for, or maybe it's just a listening ear. Maybe they're just feeling stressed and they just need to vent a little bit. Right. So, with that spreadsheet, I was at least able to say, okay, I haven't touched, or I haven't seen this person. I haven't had a conversation about life for 3 weeks. Like, this is not acceptable for myself as a leader. So I need to make sure that I go and make a point to have a 5-minute conversation, just ask them how they're doing, what's going on in their life beyond the class. And so I found that for myself actually helped quite a bit, because it did break down that wall, that barrier, because they knew that I was there as an authentic person trying to understand their world and how I could better it, not just coming in to say, oh, I'm going to catch you in a moment so I can write you up, right, or get rid of you.
Right.
And unfortunately, for so many teachers, they have had a leader like that, where they've had a negative experience and they build those walls to protect themselves, so that they don't want to share anything. They don't want to bother you. They want to just be in a classroom by themselves and not have a interaction with the leader. And so for myself, I just want to be very intentional of going in and making sure that every time I had an interaction with someone, it was positive and something where they wanted to come back to.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I really like the phrase, relationship walks. For me, what I would do in a very similar fashion, not with a spreadsheet though, for me it was just more use of my calendar. I would intentionally put time on my calendar for going to see staff, but go see staff when they don't have kids in the classroom. I think this is a big deal. You talked about walkthroughs, and walkthroughs are a big deal, and everybody, wants to see them done, and they want to see the data on, what they're doing. Or people ask, I get this question all the time, working with districts all over the country, like, what type of feedback should we be giving them, and how quickly do we need to give the feedback? And all of that is really important. But that's not the point of this particular part of the conversation. The point here is you've got to build those relationships, and set time aside to go see your teachers when they don't have kids, and don't go consume their whole prep hour. Let's not get carried away, unless the conversation goes in that direction and they feel like they want you to be a part of that, or they're opening that conversation up. But I would literally do that. I would put on, like on a Sunday afternoon, sitting watching football or whatever, on my calendar as I was planning my week. I would put, go see, fourth period teachers with prep, and I would just, couple of days that week, and maybe I'd also, put in another, 6th hour or something like that, just so I could always make sure I was able to get in, just check in, how you doing? What you talked about, just to start your answer with this, to me, it's all about trust. When you walk in the room and a teacher jumps up or is like, oh my gosh, or whatever. I remember when we first started our walkthrough protocols, when at the time I was an assistant principal, you'd walk in the room and I called it the hiccup. Teacher would be teaching or something, and we'd walk in and they'd be like, just have this like little hesitation, this little stutter, because they're not used to it. Obviously you want to build that trust. And I think trust can be built in a number of ways. And this is why I love this question so much. You talked about you've got to really communicate your expectations, but really communicating them doesn't mean on the first day staff meeting that you cover them. Yeah, do that, but you've got to talk about it repeatedly. And it isn't just about the talk, it's about the follow through. Because what a lot of staff know is what a lot of other staff are doing. And if there are ways that, people are falling short of the mark, they don't need to be involved in the nitty gritty. They don't need to know that you've been in having a conversation or holding somebody to or reinforcing an expectation. But word travels quick, and if they see that transition, that change in somebody to coming up to the bar, then it's clear that you as the leader are following through. I think that's a huge part of trust that gets overlooked. You don't have to be their friend. I heard it said once, Josh, it was actually the principal that hired me to be an assistant principal. Randy used to say it all the time, you don't get to be one of them, but you can be one with them. There's a big difference there, right? So I love this question on relationships, and I know I could riff on this one for probably an hour. I've probably already overused my time on this particular question, but I think it's huge, right?
Yeah, it's so huge. It's everything really as an administrator. I mean, your touch points, with your students, with your parents, with your teachers. I mean, the biggest skill that you need to develop as a young leader is your communication. That's the key piece, because you are discussing so many things with so many people on a daily basis, and your decision making too. Like, you make 1,000 decisions a day that are extremely important.
Yeah, easily.
So you better be able to communicate, in that process. So yeah, communication, building relationships is key for any new leader, really any leader in general. But I think, when someone's thinking about, their early stages of leadership, this is where you need to start for sure. Absolutely. You ready for the second question here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I love this question. So this was actually on books. So they were asking for our new leaders, what's the most important book for you that you read in your new role? And I can vividly remember a book being given to me, but I wanted to ask you, was there a book that you read on your own, or was it in a program, or did a mentor give you something?
That's so interesting. Yeah, we talked about this before we even hit record, and I've had time to think. And just across here to the left of me is one of my many bookcases, and I've got 2 full shelves that are just pure leadership books, and I'm seeing books like Leverage Leadership, and I'm seeing books like Culturize, The Energy Bus. Focus by Mike Schmoker. I mean, there's so many really, really good ones. I'll tell you that, to me, the one that I thought was the most critical and that I've gone back to over and over and over, and it's not specifically a leadership book, and it's definitely not specifically an education book, but John Gordon's Energy Bus. Energy Bus is one that will always stand out to me. And the reason for that is the way that it's written, the way that, it's focusing on how I, as an individual, choose to show up every day, how I choose to look at the world every day, makes a huge impact on everybody else that's around me. There's a lot of technical stuff. I mean, I mentioned Leverage Leadership. Holy moly, that book's fantastic when it comes to data stuff. But if you can't master the art of being the leader, the science part of the leadership, it's difficult to ever get to. So to me it's Energy Bus. I could probably riff on 10 or 12 others, but Energy Bus, I think, really helped to transform me, kind of in everything to do with my shift, my identification of the road to awesome, going from the guy catching them doing it wrong to, hey, let's focus on the things they're doing right. Let's focus on how I'm going to show up every day. That came from John Gordon's Energy Bus.
I love it. So I was given, when I received word that I got promoted to go into administration, my principal gave me What Great Principals Do Differently by Todd Whitaker. So you can see all the tabs that I have. These are very old tabs of, and I just happened to flip through it too right before we got on because I saw the question. And I've got everything highlighted, of course, because it's just such a profound book. And, there's a reason why he's sold so many copies. But Todd Whitaker, such a brilliant man. And, I had the great honor of interviewing him for Aspire to Lead. But, this book for me, it does a great job of just having, it's not a long read also, I'll say that. It's pretty thin, but there's just a lot of questions in there that he asks that all new leaders, new principals, new assistant principals, we all wonder about. And it's so hard to transition from a teacher to an administrator. And as much experience as you have in the classroom or even in the administrative offices, if you've had a chance to, do those different tasks, you don't really know what the job's about. And there's so many different philosophies and decisions that need to be made and understood. And so, yeah, this book was phenomenal for myself. It was kind of a game changer, and at least gave me a little insight into the job before actually going over to that new campus. But yeah, that was probably one that was beneficial. That I remember, the principal handing over his desk to me, and just consuming it immediately.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that book up. And it's funny to see you, most people aren't watching this, but to see you kind of pick that up and have all the tabs. And
yeah.
I will tell you that I have multiple copies, but the copy that I really lived in, we did it as a leadership book study. I hired 2 new assistant principals at a point in time. We did that. Josh, that copy is like falling apart. Like the things are just like stuffed back in because I've opened and closed and opened and closed so much that the binding is just gone on that book. It is truly an exceptional book when it comes to everything that that we need to know and just the questions that we have. And you're right, Todd Whitaker is just an incredible person. Somebody I've had an opportunity to have several conversations with, and he wants every administrator to be successful, and that book is one that really takes us going in the right direction. So there's a couple of really great recommendations there for books. We probably also could go on and on and on about books here as well, but let's do this. Are you ready to jump to the third question?
Oh, of course. Let's do it.
All right. Okay. So this one I love. And this one actually came from somebody who this year was a brand new superintendent, but it's an exceptional question, whether you're a brand new AP, brand new principal, or a brand new superintendent. Honestly, this is even great if you're a brand new teacher, but what are some tips for managing your time? Now, before I let you start answering, I'm going to let you kind of ruminate on this one for a second. Yeah. So I got to say this. Myself, I've never been great at time management. I am not type A. Whatever the opposite is, whether that's type B or type Z, I'm that. Like 100%.
I think we're the same on this one, buddy.
I love this. This is going to be fun then. But man, I've had to pick up a lot of tips on managing time, and so much so that when I did my dissertation, just the struggles around the organizational management of the school versus the instructional leadership stuff. I switched late in the game my dissertation topic just to find out, am I the only one who struggles with the organizational management stuff? I had the instructional leadership piece. I was good. But all that organizational management stuff, it comes to managing time. So I've given you a little bit extra time to kind of think this one through. So we can go a couple directions with this if you want. If you want to just like list a bunch, or maybe we just kind of play a little bit of badminton here with some tips.
I love it.
Okay, so go.
I'm gonna start with my first tip. Is I decided that during the school day, and one of my principals said this beautifully, is that as an administrator, it is like riding a bike, but you're on fire, the bike's on fire, and everything around you is on fire. And it was so true. And I didn't know it at the time, but that's how administrative life is. And so if you have a to-do list that you think you're going to get done every single day, you are very mistaken. So
right.
What I decided, and this is one tip, was to get into the building early prior to teachers really being in the building, because what I found was when I got there closer to when the school day began, I had a line already established at my door, and I got 0 tasks done. So obviously, as administrators, we have a lot of documentation, a lot of things that need to get done clerically. And so I came in early, got those things done. Also the benefit to that is that on the back end, right at the end of the day, I didn't have to stay as long as I would have. So I could go home to my family and see them, when they were awake, versus in the morning, I'm not really seeing them. They're getting ready for the day, or they're asleep. So I try to use that time to my benefit. And so time management, not only to be a better administrator, but then also to be a better father and to be a better husband.
I like that. I'll go with this one, and I've already talked about calendar, but this is another calendar tip. be as proactive as you can be. So what I would do on Sundays, and sometimes I would even do this like Friday evening before I left the building, but usually it was on Sunday, block the things that you know you really want to make sure happen. So those things that are truly your priorities. You know, for me, school culture was always a huge priority. So I would put blocks of time for school culture. I'll give you the tip about leveraging your secretary, unless you do it next, as my next tip. But she knew exactly what it meant when I had those things on my calendar. So that's where I'm going on spending time in classrooms with teachers when they don't have kids, or, you know, whatever the case may be. But the more that you can block what you need specifically accomplished on your calendar in advance, that will help you, number one, hold yourself to, oh, hey, I just, you know, had this event pop up on my calendar that says I have to check email. I always put email like 3:30 on my calendar, because it liberated me through the day. You know, like if I know at 3:30 I'm going to be checking email, I'm good until then. I don't need to, you know, open my computer and look at an email, or open my phone and look at an email, you know, when I'm in a classroom or wherever the case may be. That always kind of helped liberate me. So on Sunday afternoon, just start to put some blocks on your calendar that you know you want to have accomplished. To me, I think that's huge.
All right. I'm not going to steal your secretary one.
Perfect.
But I do want to say, like, be careful with the open door policy. That's what I'll say. And being comfortable with closing your door. Because early as an administrator, I did want to be accessible, but I did it to a degree that was detrimental to myself as an administrator, and time management went out the door because people just would show up. And that, you know, it was everybody. It was students, parents, and teachers coming into my door because it was open all the time. And, you know, I'd get into a task or something that needed to be, you know, submitted, something that was due. And then I would have interruption after interruption, and then I would have to stay late because, you know, I had to get it done. It was due, right? So being comfortable with having your door closed, having a sign on the door, letting them know, you know, I'm either in a meeting or, you know, that I'll be available at a certain time. And, you know, you're going to probably talk about this too, but, you know, having some folks in your corner also that can help establish that and turn folks away, because even when those signs are on, people will knock on the door and want to interrupt. So, you know, being comfortable with that. It took me some time to understand that an open door policy is not always the best policy.
I love that. And that's a trap I fell into. So I'm glad you talked about that one. So empowering your secretary is what I want to talk about next. I think this is so crucial. And it took me, you know, maybe a year or so to really understand the importance and the power of it. But once my secretary and I had developed a really good quality system, it wasn't just that she ran interference well, but it was also that she had full access to my email. And, you know, there's probably 60% of the emails I didn't need to see. So, you know, parent email, you know, I'm mad at, you know, such and such teacher. Well, she would reply as me, have you spoken to the teacher? The answer is no. She scheduled a meeting for him. I didn't have to do that. You know, perfect. I trust her. I know she can do it. We have conversations every single morning. So if you empower your secretary, schedule 15 minutes every morning together so you can have a little touch base, that kind of thing. But it was huge. It also helped me, like as I would go cruising down the hallways, you know, I'm headed to, you know, whatever classroom to, you know, to do an observation, or I need to go meet with a teacher, or I have an IEP meeting, or wherever I'm going. You know this, when you're in the hallway, that accessibility that you just talked about, that open door thing, everybody wants to stop you. I'm sure it's, you know, hey, Josh, I need to talk to you about this. Josh, you got 2 minutes. Hey, Josh, you got this.
Yep.
It's the same thing for me. But Marilyn and I had a system where all I had to say was, hey, shoot Marilyn a quick email. Tell her what you need. Tell her how much time. She'll schedule it. I'll come to you. Poof. That was the system. And it was so amazing. I mean, what it also helped actually do, Josh, was before you knew it, people started realizing that they could solve their own problems. They didn't need me to solve every single problem. That was
huge.
Great. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. No, I love it. Yeah, the last thing, and this isn't so much managing time, but also managing mental health. I would say that you need to put some boundaries up in place, especially with email and being accessible when you're at home. So for myself, I did have a cutoff time that I would not respond to email. I would not respond to anyone really, because I was like, this is my time to be home, to be with my family, and I'm going to be intentional about that. And I think I just want to state that because I did not do that early in my career, where I was spending an insane amount of hours on the campus and away from my family. And I was sending emails 10:30 at night. And it was just not a good situation where I was all, what I was telling my staff was I was telling them that you also need to work insane hours. You
Exactly.
also need to communicate and not spend time with your family. And, that was a culture piece that I think was not good for our campus. And it wasn't good for me as a leader also, because I was getting burnt out. And then the next day, I may have, been extremely tired and irritable and not very nice to folks.
Yeah.
And so, it's just like that snowball effect. So even with managing time, I think, some of the things that we've already talked about, like if you can put those in place, I think you're going to set yourself for success at the end of the day, where you really do need to be, away from the campus, not thinking about the craziness and the insanity that just occurred or what's going to be up ahead. So yeah, I just want to say that boundaries are a good thing for any leader, with managing time.
I think that's fantastic. Just one thing I'll say, yeah, it's kind of a yes and.
Sure.
And like you, I was not very good at modeling that. I had my district phone, I had my personal phone, I had my laptop, I had my iPad. I mean, we had it all going all the time, and it's not good. It's not healthy. And, I was able to take a couple of steps, that kind of thing. But something that I will say that if you do feel like, hey, Josh is saying, you got to do, you got to shut it down and this kind of stuff, that's true. But there may be those times where I was one who didn't sleep well at times. I'd be up at 2:30 in the morning, and you know what? Nobody else is up. I'm drinking my coffee. I'm sitting in front of the fireplace. If you need to send email, go for it, but use schedule send. Because yes, Josh, you hit it on the head. If you're sending an email at 2:30 in the morning, 10:30 at night, you are telling your staff, whether you mean to or not, that, hey, we are just go, go, go here. Mm-hmm. And you know what? If I hit schedule send and it goes at 7:15, it looks like I sent it at 7:15, even if I did it at 2:30 in the morning. But yeah, that's kind of that underlying kind of, subtle way of honoring their time, because the email's not going to get to them too soon. So I love that you said that. Okay, let's jump on to question number 4. And This one, man, I think this one's so interesting. And I got to figure out how I want to phrase this one. Is this one my question to ask or yours? I can't remember. Oh, wait, no, it's yours. You've got to do
Is it
this
my
one.
Question? Well, no.
Yeah, that's right. I just asked the managing time question. So let's see how you can get through this one.
I'm going to ask another one.
Okay.
You can, because I know
I'll come back to that one.
As far as paraphrasing, yeah. So what are the best, and I think this goes with managing time too, as far as kind of like the details of administration. So what are best practices for documentation as an administrator, and how detailed are these documents? And I think this is so interesting. So I want to throw it your way because, well, one, I need to kind of remember kind of the progression of documentation through the years. I know, things have changed slightly, but for yourself, what were the best practices that you can think of?
I can think of 3 or 4. And this was another area that I had to really force myself as, the non-type A, to be real intentional about documentation. Forever, I've been a notebook guy. So, I would have, a handful of notebooks that were specific to, type or individual or something like that. Eventually, I migrated that onto the computer. So, anytime, you have a conversation with an employee that's more than just a, hey, how you doing, that kind of thing. The type that lends itself to potentially being employee discipline. When you get back to your office, or, when you're at a place where you can sit down for a couple of minutes, jot down your notes so it's fresh in your mind, and then send a follow-up email just as a, hey, thanks for having this conversation with me. Here's just a quick bullet point, of what we talked about and what was, really agreed upon, or even if it's not agreed upon, this is the directive, from that conversation. I think that's really big to do that. Something that I learned later in my career, I wish I'd learned it a lot earlier, is this: once you go into writing, stay in writing. There are those times where we're going to have those conversations that are, if you want to call it a verbal warning or a verbal redirect or whatever. But once we, in a particular realm with a particular employee, have gone to the point where, it's an informal write-up or a memorandum to file or whatever phrasing, your particular organization uses, once you go into writing, you need to stay there, because at that point, it's beginning to build documentation of a pattern of behavior. So to me, those are the two that jump out the most. And I guess the third one, our attorney, when I was a principal, I heard him say this more times than I care to admit to. But if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. So yeah, documentation's critical. It really is. And whether you're good at it or not, you'll continue to get better and get better. Yep. And I've seen some things, since leaving my superintendency, tendencies I have in documentation where I'm like, wow, I ended up getting really good at that.
Well, unfortunately, you have to. I mean, and
right.
I think you said it too. I wish I learned this early on in my career, but it was through mistakes and people, either a secondary director or a lawyer, saying, do you have X, Y, and Z? And you're like, oh shoot, was I supposed to? So, it was
right.
one of those learning through fire, and trial through fire, and just learning that practice of, I had a notebook to start off with, and then I realized, okay, it's easier to do it, digitally, and I can start creating electronic folders, and and then, Google Suite comes in, and then I can, have my Google folders there where I have, if it's a parent, if it's a student, if it's a staff member, whatever it is, that I can have this documentation. And, unfortunately, with a lot of those conversations, those tough, uncomfortable, meetings, I did have my laptop there, and sometimes I would slide it over and just start taking notes. And I had to do the same process of sending a email afterwards and just letting them know of what things were covered, and that way we both were on the same page as to what the conversation was. And that way they also knew that if I had the laptop there and I was taking notes, that it was more official than just a common conversation. So I wanted them, if there was some high emotions, to understand that they needed to calm down a little bit, because it was going to be documented as far as what was being said. And that's unfortunate, but that's the reality of things, as far as administration. Yeah. So making sure that, if you weren't having those notes taken during the middle of the conversation electronically, and if you're using a notebook, that I had to transfer that immediately over to the computer. So as soon as the meeting was done, I didn't go into another task. I didn't leave my office. That's shutting the door, getting those notes where they needed to go. If it's student discipline, after that was done, after you call the parent, whatever program I was in, for ours, thankfully we had a note section. I would just start filling the notes out and letting them know exactly what happened. Or, if a teacher sent an email, to give more information, immediately doing that, because what would happen was I'd get a stack of, discipline referrals, or, all these different meetings that I hadn't done notes on.
Right.
And then, talking about that time management piece, it's not getting done during the day. Yeah. So, now I'm having to schedule, a 2-3 hour block of time somewhere to then catch up on documentation. So, in addition to making sure that you have those notes either during the meeting or after the meeting, make sure that you're doing it immediately so it doesn't stack up. And you also forget important details that need to be within that documentation.
Yeah, I think that's huge right there. The closer to the time that it happens, the more efficient you're going to be, and the more accurate your memory is going to be. Something that you said in there too, kind of made a couple other things come to mind. When you do exactly what you're talking about, and I would do it too, where you're taking notes, right there on your laptop. often, and I'm a little more focused on the employee discipline stuff than with the student discipline piece, which is good. You've talked about student discipline. On the employee side, there's an pretty good opportunity or a good likelihood that if you are doing or working with some employee discipline, that there may be a union representative or something like that in the room, which gives me two thoughts. Number one is taking those notes. Really, really efficient thing and a great way to be transparent. I've had union reps ask, "Can I have a copy of your notes?" Of course, there's no problem with that.
For sure.
And here's the other piece I want to add to that when it comes to documentation, especially when it gets to a point where it can be pretty emotional, could potentially be leading toward a recommendation for non-renewal or something along those lines. There is nothing that says you can't also have representation in the room. Not necessarily meaning somebody there's a rep, but rather a second set of eyes.
Yep.
I did that several times in those really what are leading to tense moments. I think the first couple of times that I non-renewed teachers, I would have somebody else in the room, and it's another administrator. Typically, one of my assistant principals would sit in with me, and that's just simply, what we want to make sure that we're accurate. We want to make sure that we're documenting everything correctly, and that our memories are accurate if it ever comes to pass. And that works well, I think, in helping your union representation understand that you're taking this very seriously. This isn't just you coming out of left field.
No, I love that. I love what you just said, because I do that often too, because if it's just a one-on-one meeting, it's their word against yours. And so, it was really beneficial to have a third person in there, just to be someone that, saw and heard what was going on in that meeting. So that, if someone claimed that something was done or said that didn't actually occur in the meeting, I had, someone else. And a lot of times I would have them take the notes. So I could be very intentional about the conversation and what was going on in that meeting, and not so much distracted with notes. So no, that's a great point. I love that you said that.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. So we'll come back to that question that I tried to give to you. But I wasn't trying to get rid of it. I really wasn't. It's such a great question. It's really, really deep. And really what this is about is all the things that go on behind the closed door of the principal. And, schools are, I've said it for a long time, and I'm not the first person to think it or say it. Schools are a microcosm of your community. And in your community, you have moments of grief and sadness and loss, new beginnings and celebrations, and everything in between. And so often, as the principal, my wife would jokingly say I was the mayor of Rock Springs High School. You get to be a part of so many of those moments, good, bad, and just kind of in between. So as a principal, let's talk about those key moments and how important your full presence is to those moments, and the lasting impact that will have on you as a leader, but then also on your school community.
Yeah. No, I think this is beautifully written as far as, there's like a paragraph here. So you did a fantastic job of kind of giving a synopsis, but I think it hits on all those different emotions, right? And I heard this from a lot of aspiring leaders that would come in, they would shadow us. And then at the end of the day, you could just see like them trying to process just all of the different experiences and emotions that occurred within the principal's office. And they would always say, I just didn't understand what all happened back here, in the front office and of course in the principal's office. And so, behind closed doors, because you are like a mayor, if there's a death to a family member, I could vividly remember a couple of situations where the families would come in and they just came in just, grieving and in tears and not knowing, the next steps in life. And, you have to be the counselor in that in that situation and trying to help them through that. And also, trying to find resources for the kid that's attending your school and understanding that this huge loss is going to affect them in the classroom. And what are we going to put in place to make sure that they're successful in this time of grieving? And, but then also being there for the family. And then you've got great joys of people getting married and having kids, and like you get all these other additional things that are well beyond the four walls, but also affect what happens with the culture of the school. And you want to be there to be the biggest cheerleader too, and to find ways to shout on the mountaintop of like how excited you are for them or being proud of them. So it's such these high spectrums that you see. But I will say that, behind closed doors, that it also needs to be a safe space. So, as an administrator, life is difficult, and you unfortunately get yelled at, cussed at, called every name in the book, and you go through some really uncomfortable meetings and conversations, and you do need a safe space to go behind closed doors and to be able to have a counseling session with your own crew, right? Thankfully, I've always been able to have this like wonderful relationship with the administrative staff on my campus, and to be able to go in and ask for advice, or spitball, like, did I do this all right, or am I in the wrong here? Because sometimes you start to question that after you get yelled at and called every name. So having that safe space of like trying to work things out, because a lot of times, and this too, Darrin, like every day seems like a brand new experience that you've never had before, even though you've been in the position for 10 years. And you're like, am I crazy here? Can I just bounce this off to you? Or maybe you're about to prepare for a meeting, shut the door and have these crucial conversations of like, how do I prepare to make sure that this runs as smooth as possible? So yeah, I think, with those mixed emotions that were listed, I think it's not only, yes, you're doing that with your staff and with your community, but you're also having to do that with your own core administrative staff.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Everything you just said was exceptional, and I just want to build on what you were just saying about when having those behind closed doors moments with your core team. And it took me right to one particular incident that we had, I think, fairly early in my principalship, maybe my first year, maybe my second, but it wasn't good. We had received a pretty significant threat against a handful of our schools, and it's in those moments. I talk all the time, Josh, about, leading from the front, leading from the middle, and leading from the back. And obviously the preferred positions are middle and back, but there are moments where you have to lead from the front. And, that particular incident, I'll never forget, bringing my team, into the office and just saying, all right, look, here's what we have. And being able to have that trust within the team so that we all were able to collectively, okay, we need to make sure we do this. We need to make sure we do this. We know we have this in our crisis plan, but this is a little bit unique. What else might we need to do here, here, and here? It's some of those things behind closed doors that I think also are really critical. That incident, mercifully, nothing negative happened. Evacuating our students went about as beautifully as we could have ever hoped for it to go. And late in the day, everybody's leaving. The last of the kids are gone. And I told the staff that, they needed to leave the building, but I still had, in addition to my team, 6 or 7 staff members who stayed. And, some told me, some told other members of the leadership team that, just simply because of how you guys led us today, we didn't want to leave you. And, when you have those moments behind closed doors, those are the moments that then translate out, looping it all the way back to the beginning with relationships and expectations and trust. There's just so many things, Josh, that happen behind closed doors. And, you and I both preach, be out, be available, but there are going to be those moments. Anything like you said, from, a tragic loss in the community to, to some great news, to all other things in between. I guess I would say this: really stay present in those moments. Not only because you need to be that great active listener, because you're going to be called on to be the great active leader at a point from what you're learning, but also hang on to those moments, because whether it's a difficult moment, a challenging moment, a celebration, whatever it is, those are the things that you, as the early career leader, you need to bank those things and be able to lean into them, because that's going to build you and build your character and build your confidence as a leader. I wouldn't wish anybody that situation that I led my team through that day, but I know it made me a heck of a lot better leader.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think, being the leader that people are comfortable behind the closed door with you, right? I can think of countless opportunities where teachers came in, shut the door, and then just laid a bomb on my desk as far as, my spouse just lost their job, or I'm going through a really horrendous divorce, or, fill in the blank of what was going on in their life. And a lot of times I didn't even know it was occurring. They put on the brave face. Yeah. They were great with the kids. They were, phenomenal with their instruction, and kids were mastering whatever subject they were teaching. But for them to feel comfortable enough to come in and to let us know what was really going on behind the scenes is huge. And I think, as a aspiring leader or someone that's early in their stage, like that's the goal. You want to make sure that they are comfortable with sharing whatever's going on in their life, good or bad, and that, they're willing to close that door and, share that with you, and know that you're there to help them through whatever it is they're going through, good or bad.
I love it, man. That was 5 really good, really in-depth questions. And, I know we could probably hit 10 or 20 more, but we've already consumed quite a bit of time for one episode. Let's do this. I'm going to ask you just one quick question, cool. And then you can ask one quick one of me. School year's getting ready to start. I'm a brand new leader. One thing, just tell me one thing. If you can do this, this is going to help you be successful.
Find your mentor. I think you need to find someone that, and this could be in your building, it could be somewhere in the district, it could be somewhere across the world. It doesn't really matter, but finding that person that you feel comfortable with asking questions, bouncing ideas off of, getting, advice. That was always huge. I still, to this day, even though I'm not in a building right now, I still have mentors. I have multiple mentors for different areas of my life. So I would just say, keep trying to learn, but you can't do this by yourself. You can't do it, especially early on in your career. You're going to make mistake after mistake after mistake. Everyone does. It's part of the journey. But, if you're going to try and do it alone, it's going to be really an uphill battle for you. So find your mentor, find someone that you trust, that you aspire to be someday, that you respect, and that's going to give you feedback that is going to make you better. You don't want a yes man, yes ma'am, yes sir. You want someone that's going to actually feed critical feedback to you that's going to make you a better administrator. So I'm going to flip it to you, Darrin, because I know I can see your wheels turning also on this question. So is there something that you would advise also?
I would just say get some clarity. Just get clear about what you really care about. I would have gone with the don't try to be Superman, but you already went there, which is super. I would just say find some clarity. Again, be really clear about what you care about. And I'm not talking about a laundry list of 100 things. I mean, for me, it was 6. What are the 6 things that you really think matter? And then make sure somebody knows what those are. And then have a system for checking in on yourself. For me, I would actually go stand on the balcony above my gymnasium. And in my own mind, I could see those 6 things on the floor. And I did that about every 3 or 4 weeks. Occasionally my secretary would put it on my calendar and she'd say, get over there. You need to go get refocused. But it's so easy to get lost in the weeds. It's so easy to just there's so much to do. Get clear about what you care about and make sure you're checking in on yourself regularly. Don't let yourself get lost in the job. It's an amazing job, but you can get lost in it real fast.
Love it. Well, for those who are listening, if you're a young leader, hey, maybe you're a current leader, you're a veteran, but you need support in any way. Obviously, you can reach out to the both of us on social media, email, on our website. There's contact forms. You can reach us that way too. So we are here to help in any way possible. Obviously, we only touched on 5 or 6 questions, but I know there's probably about 1,000 more out there from our listeners. So if you have something that we can support you in, please reach out. Darrin and I we do have the open door policy for y'all. And so
that's right.
Make sure that you are contacting us and letting us know how we can support you. Darrin, do you have any other things that you want to bring up to the listeners?
No, I think you've really hit it well there. Back to what Josh said, find a mentor. If you don't have somebody there in your district or in your school or something like that, then reach out to one of us or somebody else that you find that you really trust. Because, man, Josh, you said it so well. You can't do the job alone. You just can't. So, lean into those that are out there around you and, reach out. We'd love to talk to both of you. Thank you for listening in to this episode on both the Leaning Into Leadership podcast and
Aspire to Lead.
There we go. Right on.